guys, how's it going? So in this week's video, we are going to be talking about Tailor's Tacks. Why I use them, why I recommend them, why you should use them too, and then I'll show you guys how to do them as well. So, okay, so basically with Tailor's Tacks, they are kind of almost like a couture level sewing technique. They're really not couture. I mean, they are and they aren't. I mean, people use them, but I definitely recommend using them if you're doing home sewing all the time. The reason I recommend them is because of, well, they're good practice for one, and I feel like they come more in handy with some of the other techniques that you might use to mark parts of your pattern. So for example, if you are marking a dart on your fashion fabric that you're about to sew, I don't like to use tools like this one that have a point on them, because using this, you might really poke a huge hole in your fabric just to pierce it. Plus, if you're pressing things and moving stuff all over the place, this one may not, withstand the length of the process of your sewing until you need to see that little tiny point of that dart on that one piece. Like a lot can happen between the moment that you pierce the fabric and you actually are doing whatever you need to do with that little point. So I have this just for my muslins, but I literally only use it for my muslins because I don't care if there's a giant pierced hole in my fabric. The second tool that people most commonly use are water-soluble markers. Now, I have no big problem with water-soluble. The thing is, for me, I tend to use a lot of fabrics that cannot be easily laundered, and I don't want to put water on some of these fabrics. So for example, if I'm using like a wool, or if I'm using something that's going to shrink, or something that's going to get a water spot on there, there's no way in hell that I'm going to use a water soluble marker and have that stay on there and hopefully it rubs off. Like, I'm not going to take that chance. So I definitely recommend doing Tailor's Tacks. For me, I find that they are easier to see over time. They're easier for you to kind of identify right away, and they really don't take as long as you think that they might. So I'm going to show you guys just basically how to do a standard Tailor tack, and then I'm going to show you guys how to do it over 2 layers. It's really simple. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut my thread, and I have my needle here. Now, obviously you're going to want to use a needle that is going to be working with your fabric. So if you're using a really, really thin and really delicate chiffon, use a thinner needle. You don't want to use a thicker needle. The whole point of doing this is that it's not going to damage your fabric, right? So I just got a short piece, and I did not knot it at the end. So I did not tie it off at the end, but I did double the thread. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys here on this little scrap. I'm going to essentially, so if this is going to be my point here, right? Actually, I'll just do it in the middle because it'll be easier. So if my point's going to be right here in the middle, I'm going to go ahead and go in once underneath, and then pull it out on the other end, right? As if I'm going to do a regular stitch. I'm going to pull it out, but I'm not going to pull it all the way through. So you can kind of see I'm leaving, it's about 1.5 inches. You could even do more, 2 inches. It's not necessary to leave it that long, but I tend to leave it about 1 inch, 1.5 inches. That's how much I generally use. So then what you're going to do is you're going to go back to where you first put it back in, and then you're going to take it out, same place on the other end, right? So it's almost like you're doing a back tack on your own stitch. Then what you're going to want to do is just kind of pull it out, pull it out, pull it out, and that's it. That's it. Now you don't have to hold it onto here. You can generally probably just pull this guy and it's okay. But I tend to kind of just make sure that when I'm doing that second pull through, nothing gets knotted up or twisted or anything weird. So at this point, your Tailor tack is done. So you can go ahead and cut it here. And what I tend to do at this point is I'll cut it right in the middle. Now what this creates is, you see there's like, it's literally just a quick stitch. It's almost like a basting stitch. Now after you do your dart or whatever it is that you're doing on this piece, it'll be easy just to grab these 2 pieces and pull them out without having to like have anything really damaging your fabric. Like, that's the point. And I did it here with this blue thread on the muslin, but if you're doing something like on a red fabric, you can use a black thread or whatever, just so that you can easily identify it, and that you're not, as I said, poking holes or using water soluble if you're using a delicate fabric. All right, so Now, for example, I'm gonna rip this guy out now, bam. Now, let's say you are cutting out fabric, right? Let's say you're cutting out, you know, two front bodice pieces, right, that have a dart on each one, and you need the same marking on both pieces. The Tailor tacks work fantastic for this. So let me go ahead and thread my thread here. So the Tailor's tacks will go through both fabrics. So think about if you're using water soluble marker, you're not going to be able to do that, right? So I'm going to go ahead and put the second piece of fabric on top of the first. And so I'm going to do it the same way. So I'll go ahead and go slowly again. I'm going to go in first. I'm going to go out. Right? I'm going to pull that through. Make sure it's even. This part, at this point, if you're joining two pieces like this, or like marking two pieces, you want to make sure that everything's even. And at this point, just make sure you definitely have at least an 1.5 inch tail. So you're going to go back from the beginning, right? And then go back to the other side. I got this. Now I'm leaving the loop a little bit larger. Now obviously if you're doing this, the more you practice it, you're not gonna fiddle with this, but I'm just kind of going slow here. Anyway, so you have your loop, you got your 1.5 inch tail on this end. I'm gonna go ahead and leave a 1.5 inch tail on this end. Now, you've now marked your both pieces of fabric, right? Go ahead and clip it in the middle. But you have to realize at this point, both of these pieces of fabric are joined, right? And you don't want that, especially since you're gonna be sewing it. So what I'll do right away, I don't do this like later, because what'll end up happening is you might accidentally pull this guy off and then one piece of fabric is marked and not the other. So what you wanna do instead is lift this up slightly, and then I'm gonna cut here and I'm gonna cut here. Now this guy is marked. Yeah, he's got his tiny little points there. And this guy is marked, but I'll go ahead and just kind of pull these up a little bit. Now, at this point, you have both of your muslin pieces marked in the same spot with the same thread that you used on both. Now, of course, there might be mishaps where you accidentally pull out the thread on one and you'll have to remark it. I'd have to say that's pretty rare for me, because you have to imagine there's at least 4 threads going through, and chances are if something gets pulled out, it might be 1 thread or it might be 2 threads. You'll still see the rest of the markings. And even, to be quite honest, even if I have to remark it, let's say all of them get pulled out and I have to remark it with my pattern piece, I would still, again, much rather do that than piercing a hole or using a water soluble marker. I think it really just comes down to the fabric that you're using and how much care you want to take in marking your pattern pieces. Because yeah, I could go ahead and use this and just stab everything and just have holes everywhere. But if I'm working on a knit, that might be totally acceptable to do and it might work. But if you're working on a really nice fabric that you don't want to damage and cause unnecessary stress on, avoid it if you can. So with that said, hope the video was informative and helpful. If you use a different technique, if you don't use this technique, go ahead and leave your comments down below. I would be happy to read them. I know some people kind of have a little bit of aversion to doing this just because it's a little more time consuming, but to be honest, the more you do it, the faster you get at it, and then eventually you can just start doing multiple Tailor's tacks in a row, like 5 Tailor's tacks in a row, 6 in a row, and it goes by really quickly. So anyway, hope you guys like the video, thumbs up, subscribe, all the places, all the stuff. Support on Patreon if you like this content, and I'll go ahead and see you guys in the next one. Bye!